Comedy, science fiction and fantasy from EC Comics is the focus of this Golden Age report for April 19th to April 25th, 2021. First, the comedy. A copy of Mad No. 1 sold at eBay last week. This comic book, which was published by EC Comics in 1952, was the forerunner of Mad magazine, the long-running satire magazine that became a cultural phenomenon. The cover artist for Mad No. 1 was Harvey Kurtzman, who was one of the more famous creators to come out of the EC bullpen. He continued his work on Mad magazine long after EC Comics had folded. The copy of Mad No. 1 that sold in an eBay auction was an ungraded specimen. The book sold for $941.01. Science fiction and fantasy are the focus of the last two featured comic books. The first of these books is Weird Science Fantasy Annual No. 2, published by EC in 1953. The book featured stories reprinted from the Weird Science and Weird Fantasy titles. The cover artwork for Weird Science Fantasy Annual No. 2 was created by Alfred Steen, another of the talented creators in the EC bullpen. The copy of Weird Science Fantasy Annual No. 2 that sold at eBay last week was an ungraded copy. The book sold in an auction for $979. Not to be outdone was a copy of Weird Science Fantasy Annual No. 1, released by EC Comics in 1952. Once again, the book sported a cover by Alfred Steen and featured reprinted stories from Weird Science and Weird Fantasy. The talented creators of the stories that appeared in the various titles from EC Comics were shown in this drawing of the EC bullpen that was created by Marie Severin. Once again, an ungraded copy of Weird Science Fantasy Annual No. 1 sold in an eBay auction. The comic book fetched a nice sale of $1,575.